Good morning everyone, and thank you for watching UMP Talk Show. My name is Chino and I'm going to be your host of the day. Today we're going to talk about a case which happens to be one of the most devastating tragedy ever happened in Malaysia, which is known as the collapse of the Highland Tower. But before we go any further details of the case, let us watch a brief video regarding the tragedy.
Highland Tower is a famous living area that located just above Kuala Lumpur. Highland Tower consists of 3 identical of 12-story blocks that each block contains 2 towers that are connected together by a central lift and stairs. 11 December 1993, Block 1 of Highland Tower had collapsed. A large number of rescue teams are deployed for the search and rescue.
Visual terbaru yang kami rakamkan. Sehingga ini kerja-kerja mencari dan menyelamatkan mangsa diteruskan. Pangsapuri 12 tingkat yang runtuh ini adalah Blok 1 Highland Towers. Pasukan bantuan dari pelbagai jabatan termasuk Jabatan Pertahanan Awam dikerah untuk menangani tragedi dahsyat ini. Dalam keadaan kelam kabut ini, tangisan dan suasana sayu turut dirasai.
Today, the 2 remaining blocks was left empty and abandoned. Block 1 of the Highland Tower that used to stand alongside the other 2 blocks are now covered by the jungle. It has been 22 years since this tragedy occurred.
Now then, to have a better understanding of the case, we'll have a talk with Mr. Michael Singh, who is a professional engineer from the Board of Engineering Malaysia, as well as Mr. Tan Ho Kee, who is a UMP lecturer specialized in engineering field. Finally, from a perspective of an environmental officer, we'll also have Ms. Atika on our show. Firstly, we are going to start with our first guest, Mr. Leong. So, Mr. Leong, can you please explain to us how does the tragedy Highland Tower happen?
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Behind the towers was a small stream of water known as East Creek. East Creek flowed into the side of the towers before the tower's construction. So a pipe system was built to divert the stream to bypass the towers. In 1991, a housing development project known as Bukit Antara Bangsa Development Project commenced constructions on the hilltop located behind the towers. The hill was clear of trees and other land-covering plants, exposing the hilltop to land erosion. That is the leading factor of causing landslides. The water from the new construction site was diverted into the existing pipe system used to divert the flow of East Creek. The failure of the pipe system causes water, sand and silt from both East Creek and the construction site infiltrate the pipes. Thus, surrounding soil had to absorb the excessive water. And also, the monsoon rainfall in December 1993 further worsened the situations. The water contained in the soil became oversaturated to the extent that the soil had turned viscous, in effect becoming mud. By October 1992, the hill slope had being saturated with water, and water was seen flowing down the hill slopes and also the retaining walls. During the incident, there were 4 retrogressive landslides having occurred behind the Block 1. The resultant debris imposed surcharge loading on the terrace, and a 5th slip plane propagated around the power foundations of the tower, destroying the front retaining wall. This resulted a loss of lateral support for the front row house, the power to break and the building to rock. Thus, this further worsened the structural failures which lead to the collapse.
Thank you, Mr. Leong, for your detailed explanation. To proceed with our next show, we will have Mr. Tan to tell us the causes of the collapse of the tower and a brief solution on how to tackle such tragedy from ever happen. So, Mr. Tan, would you kindly please explain to us?
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. In this case, there are several main reasons which caused the collapse of the Highland Tower. One of the reasons is due to the burst pipe on the uphill. The water from a burst pipe flows down the hill, and this leads to the increasing of the lateral earth pressure to the retaining wall, and the increasing pressure exceeds the retaining wall's calculated ultimate load and cause the wall to fail. In my opinion, when designing the retaining wall, an engineer should have taken consideration of its surrounding area. In other words, the surveyor who are responsible for surveying the area should have properly conducted a geotechnical experiment of the proposed construction site as to figuring out the strength of the soil. The other reason is because of the construction of building on the edge of the hill is not suited, especially in equatorial and tropical climates with high rainfall. Maybe the engineer did not take into consideration of the location of the building construction near the edge of the hillside. They should have abided to standard criteria distance between the slope and the building when designing the site plan. The landslide was 120 meters long and about 90 meters wide, involving approximately 40,000 cubic meters of debris. The slope failure was positive pore pressure induced or due to the increase in groundwater level, which could have been caused by the land clearing uphill, which led to the uphill slope being easily charged by surface water spilled over from the upper catchment. Thus, the trickling factor was assumed to be infiltration of surface water due to an ineffective drainage system rather than in-test drainage. The hill behind the block 1 is the terrace cut slope stabilized by a rubble wall made up of granitic rocks. These granitic rocks had undergone an intensive chemical weathering. The failure of the rubble wall triggered of a landslide which caused the buildings to collapse. The factor of safety of the rubble wall was found that to be less than 1.0, even without considering any presence of geological features such as relief joints and water table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for your explanation. Last but not least, we will have Miss Ain to talk about the tragedy. So, Miss Ain, based on the tragedy of the Highland Tower, in your opinion, as an environmental officer, does the project need to be assessed?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stanley, for the question. In Malaysia, under Section 34A, Environmental Quality Act 1974, for any development that has significant impact to the environment are required to conduct the environmental impact assessment. So the Highland Tower project need to undergo some of the procedure under EIA before the project approval and implementation. Based on the investigation, the main reason of the tragedy of the Highland Tower is because of the inconsistency between the Land Conservation Act with the Environmental Quality Act 1974. So the construction of the building on the edge of the hill is not suitable, especially in Malaysia, with the tropical climates and with the height of the rainfall. Furthermore, the building apartment on the hillside is also against with the law of the Land Conservation Act 1960. In the Land Conservation Act 1960 was mentioned about the prohibits of the development to carry out on the hillside with the greater of the slope than 18 degrees due to the reason connected to the environment. So the implication of the tragedy has caused damage to the environmental seriously affected areas. The purpose of the environmental impact assessment is very important to ensure that the decision maker can consider the environmental impacts when deciding whether the project need to proceed or not. Thank you.
That's all from Ms. Ain. Thank you for your in-depth knowledge of the importance of environmental assessment. In conclusion, the collapse of the Highland Tower was due to a failure of certain parties in managing the development in regards to the environmental surrounding by neglecting the law and regulations. To prevent such tragedy from ever happening again, all parties need to take this case as a lesson or as a similar tragedy may happen again in the future. Before we end our show today, does any of our other guests have any personal advices to the future engineers who are watching the show?
From my point of view, engineers should be alert to the hazards and the risks inherent in any professional task they undertake. They must never allow any unsafe conditions to persist or develop at the construction site. Thus, they should ensure at all times that there is no threat to public health and welfare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leong. Mr. Tan?
As an experienced engineer, they have to alert with the factor that will lead to the failure and take the suitable action to prevent the incident happen and protect the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. Ms. Ai?
Okay, Highland Tower tragedy need to be taken that lesson to all parties that involved in the retaining the environment. It is not due to the low utilization of the science and technology, but the attitudes of the people who rely on extreme on science and technology until against the natural law. So we cannot simply harm the environmental for our own importance.
Okay. Thank you all for all of your lovely advices. Before I end our show today, I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Leong, Mr. Tan, and Ms. Ain for joining us today and have this talk about the tragedy of the Highland Tower. And that is all for today from UNP Talk Show. Thank you for watching and have a good day.